What you're watching unfold in Lebanon right now is not a sideshow. It is the central act of a geopolitical drama that is reshaping the entire Middle East and the world's established power order along with it. The tunnels. Let's start there because the tunnels tell you everything you need to know about what kind of war this actually is and why the numbers coming out of southern Lebanon, including the ones surrounding Israeli military losses, demand your full and undivided attention right now. The IDF has confirmed it located and destroyed two massive Hezbollah tunnels in the southern Lebanese town of Kantara, built over a decade, reaching depths of some 25 meters, funded by Iran and designed, according to Israeli military officials, as part of Hezbollah's plan to conquer the Galilee. Think about that for a moment. Not to harass, not to inconvenience, to conquer. That is the word the Israelis themselves used. And when you destroy those tunnels using over 450 tons of explosives, you are not dealing with a lightly armed militia. You are dealing with a standing military force that has spent a decade building a subterranean fortress under civilian schools and mosques with Iranian blueprints and Iranian money, pointing rocket shafts directly at Israeli territory. The area of Kantara had been one of Hezbollah's main fallback positions for storing enough infrastructure for an invasion of northern Israel after it lost its first line of defense of southern Lebanese villages to Israel in the fall of 2024. During its 2024 invasion of Lebanon, the IDF found 3 tunnel city networks, but this one was by far the largest. And here is where the story gets complicated and where the American public deserves straight talk instead of sanitized Pentagon briefings and network talking head nonsense, because none of this is happening in a vacuum. This is not a surgical operation against a terrorist group hiding in caves. This is a full-scale war with a highly capable, deeply entrenched Iranian-backed military force that has been preparing for this confrontation for years. On February 28, 2026, Israel and the United States launched a war against Iran, Hezbollah's main backer, and assassinated Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. In response, Hezbollah resumed rocket strikes on Israel. Israel responded with airstrikes across Lebanon, including the capital Beirut. The Israeli army began ground operations in southern Lebanon on March 16th, eventually deploying 5 divisions. 5 divisions. Let that number sit with you. That is not a limited counterterrorism operation. That is a war, a real war. And wars have consequences that press releases do not capture. Now let's talk about what's really happening on the ground, because the casualty picture being painted for the American public is dramatically incomplete. The title of this video references 890 Israeli soldiers lost. That number comes from sources tracking cumulative IDF casualties across the broader regional conflict, and while the Israeli government has not confirmed a figure that high specifically attributable to Lebanon operations alone, what we do know from the verified data is alarming enough. As of May 1st, 2026, at least 18 IDF soldiers have been killed in Lebanon, with 1 off-duty soldier, 1 killed by friendly fire, and 16 others confirmed in official counts, but those are the sanitized official numbers. Anyone who has studied military history and the psychology of wartime governments knows that official casualty figures, especially from a country under active information management, should be treated as a floor, not a ceiling. The real question is not whether Israel is suffering losses. The question is whether those losses are achieving anything strategically sustainable. According to Haaretz, the deaths of an officer and 3 combat soldiers from the Nahal Brigade's engineering company in southern Lebanon brought the number of Israelis killed since the start of the new war with Iran to 30, with 11 of those fatalities on the Lebanon front alone. And that was a snapshot from early April. The war has intensified dramatically since then. Senior Israeli military officers were telling multiple Israeli media outlets that they were frustrated, that they believed the ongoing ceasefire negotiations were causing harm to Israeli soldiers, who were seeing daily injuries from first-person view fiber optic cable drones increasingly used by Hezbollah. Fiber optic drones. That is not improvised. That is a sophisticated weapons system specifically designed to evade electronic countermeasures. Hezbollah has evolved, and the IDF, despite all its technological superiority in the air, is finding out in blood and steel that the ground in southern Lebanon is a fundamentally different battlefield than anything their military doctrine was truly prepared for at this scale. Let me walk you through the broader strategic picture, because this is where the geopolitical fault lines become visible. According to the World Bank's Lebanon Rapid Damage and Needs Assessment 2025 report, the conflict cost Lebanon a total of $14 billion, with physical damages of $6.8 billion and decreased productivity, lost revenue, and operational costs amounting to $7.2 billion. Lebanon's real GDP declined by 7.1% in 2024. Reconstruction costs are estimated at $11 billion. You are looking at a country being economically destroyed. And when you destroy a country's economic foundation while simultaneously conducting military operations that are killing civilians, you do not create peace. You create the conditions for the next generation of fighters. That is not a political opinion. That is military history, and it is a lesson that empires and regional powers have learned over and over again in this part of the world. On April 8, 2026, shortly after the announcement of a ceasefire to the Iran war and Hezbollah signaling a pause in attacks, Israel launched what it described as its most powerful attacks on Lebanon, killing at least 357 people. The casualty count was among the highest of the entire 2026 Lebanon war. Lebanon called the attacks Black Wednesday and accused Israel of carrying out a massacre. Think about the timing of that. A ceasefire is announced, the other side signals compliance, and then Israel launches its most powerful strikes of the entire conflict. The world noticed. The Israeli actions were condemned by Lebanon, Australia, Bangladesh, Belgium, Brazil, Canada, China, Colombia, Egypt, France, Indonesia, Iran, Ireland, Iraq, Italy, Jordan, Kuwait, Malaysia, Norway, Oman, Algeria, Pakistan, Qatar, Russia, Spain, Syria, Turkey, the United Arab Emirates, and the United Nations. That is not an isolated international reaction. That is near universal global condemnation. And when the United States finds itself defending actions that virtually every other nation on earth condemns, including its closest European allies, that is a strategic problem that goes far beyond the battlefield in southern Lebanon. CNN reported that after a tense call, Prime Minister Netanyahu feared President Trump would declare a Lebanon truce if Netanyahu did not announce truce negotiations with Lebanon. So even Washington, the primary backer, the financial lifeline, the diplomatic shield at the United Nations Security Council, even Washington was applying pressure. And yet the operations continued. Villages leveled, paramedics killed. Amnesty International documented extensive destruction by the Israeli military along Lebanon's border and called for reparations and war crimes investigations, stating that so far neither has appeared. Now here is the military reality that most American commentators refuse to say plainly. Tunnel warfare is among the most punishing forms of combat in existence. The reason Hezbollah spent a decade building these networks, the reason Iran funded them to the tune of billions of dollars, is precisely because they understood something fundamental about the IDF's operational doctrine. Israel's military superiority is overwhelming in the air and at long range, but underground is the great equalizer. Lebanese military expert Naji Malayab, a retired brigadier general, assessed that Hezbollah's tunnels were preventing Israel from making major gains, comparing the achievement to the war in Gaza, where Hamas used its tunnels to bedevil Israeli forces and stage insurgency-like attacks. Two different theaters, two different enemies, the exact same strategic problem, and yet here we are, watching the same playbook deployed again with the same results. Israel controls the sky. Hezbollah controls the earth beneath everyone's feet. And when you control the ground in southern Lebanon, you control the tempo of the war. Even knowing that the tunnel network existed in the Kantar area, the IDF said that the Special Forces Yahalam Tunnel Location Unit had required over a week to find all of the various entrances of the network and fully map them out. Apparently, Hezbollah expended more energy than usual in cleverly hiding the network under a variety of civilian structures. Over a week, specialized units, hundreds of tons of explosives to destroy it. And this is just one network. The tunnels stretch beneath villages, beneath schools, beneath mosques, beneath the entire civilian geography of southern Lebanon. That is not an accident. That is strategic genius, however morally repugnant the application. Hezbollah embedded itself so deeply into the civilian infrastructure that destroying Hezbollah means destroying Lebanon. And Israel is now doing exactly that while the world watches. The war has killed more than 2,600 militants and civilians in Lebanon and displaced over 1 million people, 20% of the country's population, creating a humanitarian crisis. 1 million displaced, 20% of an entire nation uprooted. These are not statistics. These are human beings, families, elderly people who remember 2006, who remember 1982, who remember every Israeli incursion into Lebanese territory since the state of Israel was born. And every single one of those displaced individuals is a potential future recruit for whatever organization promises to give them their homes back. That is the cycle. That is the trap. And the trap is being sprung again right now in real time while American taxpayers fund the bombs and American diplomats at the UN block the resolutions demanding restraint. The IDF deployed the 98th Division into southern Lebanon on April 7th, in addition to the 36th, 91st, 146th, and 162nd Divisions already there. The stated goal was to destroy buildings near the border being used for military purposes and to push Hezbollah members north of the Litani River, 5 divisions in a country the size of Connecticut. That is an occupation, not a targeted operation, and occupations, particularly in southern Lebanon, have a historical track record that should give any rational strategist pause. Israel occupied southern Lebanon from 1982 until the year 2000, 18 years. And when they left, Hezbollah was stronger than when they arrived. That is the fundamental paradox of this war. The harder Israel hits, the more durable Hezbollah's support base becomes, not just in Lebanon, but across the entire Arab and Muslim world, and increasingly in the court of global public opinion. The IDF said that more than 1,700 Hezbollah militants were killed in Lebanon since the end of February. Internal Hezbollah sources said that over 1,000 Hezbollah fighters had been killed in the war. Even by Israel's own numbers, which are always aggressive on enemy body counts, Hezbollah is still standing, still firing, still innovating its weapon systems, and still inflicting daily casualties on IDF forces operating on the ground. That should tell you something profound about the nature of this organization. You can kill 1,000 fighters. You can destroy the biggest tunnel network in southern Lebanon with 450 tons of explosives, and the next morning the rockets still fly. The drones still come. The anti-tank missiles still find their targets. 3 Israeli soldiers were killed in attacks by Hezbollah using small drones controlled by fiber optic cables to hit Israeli tanks. Fiber optic drone attacks on Merkava tanks. Let that sink in for a second. The Merkava is among the most advanced and best protected tanks in the world. Hezbollah is killing them with drones that cannot be jammed because they are guided by light through fiber optic cables rather than radio signals. This is asymmetric warfare at its most sophisticated, and the IDF, as Haaretz itself reported, does not yet have a full response to this threat. That is a confession from the world's most technologically advanced military in the region. They don't have an answer, and soldiers are dying because of that gap. Despite the violence, an April 17th ceasefire was announced between Israel and Hezbollah, described as shaky, with both sides trading blame over alleged violations. Lebanon's health ministry continued reporting deaths from Israeli strikes even during the supposed ceasefire period. Ceasefires in this conflict have become almost theatrical. They are announced, violated within hours, and then each side blames the other while the bodies pile up and the displaced population swells. And the international community, including the United States, continues to issue statements of concern while providing the weapons and diplomatic cover that allow the operations to continue. This is the moral bankruptcy that the global South is watching in real time, and it is fundamentally reshaping how much of the world views American leadership and American values. In May 2026, Security Council members are likely to receive a letter from the Secretary General detailing options for the future of implementation of Resolution 1701 after the withdrawal of the UN interim force in Lebanon, with some council members interpreting the current escalation as evidence of the need for a sustained UN presence even after UNIFIL's mandate ends in December 2026. UNIFIL, the United Nations peacekeeping force that has been in southern Lebanon since 1978, nearly half a century, and southern Lebanon is still a war zone. That tells you everything you need to know about the structural impossibility of a purely military solution to what is fundamentally a political problem rooted in dispossession, occupation, and the absence of a credible political settlement. The 890 number in the title of this video captures something real, even if the precise figure is contested. What is not contested is this: Israeli soldiers are dying in Lebanon. The IDF is taking sustained casualties from a force they cannot destroy from the air and cannot easily defeat on the ground. The tunnel networks keep revealing themselves larger and more sophisticated than the previous ones. The international community is horrified. A shaky ceasefire keeps collapsing, and the broader regional war involving Iran, involving the United States, involving the future of the entire Middle East order is still very much in motion. The question for America is not whether to have an opinion about this conflict. The question is whether the United States is actually making strategic choices that serve American interests and American values, or whether Washington Washington has outsourced its Middle East policy to a government in Tel Aviv whose decisions are increasingly isolating America from the rest of the world? That is the question you should be demanding your elected representatives answer. Because right now, the tunnels are burning in Qantara, the rockets are still flying over northern Israel, and the dead on both sides keep accumulating while the world waits for someone with genuine strategic courage to find a way out.